Because so here's an interactive question. What happens at closing that we are pretty much looking forward to besides making our clients homeowners? What's the other thing that happens at closing?
Get paid.
Yes, because we are unlike many, many, many industries that when they show up to work, they get paid. We work a lot and we work hard, and we do not always get paid. However, we do get paid at the closing, which has been negotiated throughout, I guess, all of time, that when the home sells, we get paid. So we have a reason to want to get to that closing table just as much as those sellers who are selling and those buyers who are buying. So we are going to be talking about the transaction from both sides today. We're going to talk about the buyers and bulletproofing the transaction from a buyer's point of view, and also bulletproofing that transaction from a seller's point of view. No one is immune. No one is immune to the concerns and issues of the potential of a contract falling apart, because getting it under contract is just the beginning, isn't it? It's, I mean, those negotiation skills and that hard work that you've done showing the homes, and in this market, you're jumping at the minute the hot sheet comes out. You're making those appointments to see the just listed homes with your buyers. So we do a lot of work to get it under contract. So today we're talking about keeping it under contract and getting to that closing table. So that is what this, let's see. That is, I gotta get my little perspective here from the screen. Making it all the way to closing. So there's some main ideas here. This is, we're gonna bullet point the bulletproofing. And this is what we're gonna glance at today, the perspective and just the fact that what the issue is about whether it's a buyer side or a seller side. Inspections and repairs includes both sides. Appraisals, loan approval and funding, other contingencies, whatever they might be, co-oping and communication. And here's something I like to point out to realtors, especially if I'm speaking to newer realtors, and I know we have a varied amount of people here with varied amount of expertise and education in this business. However, I hope that we're all going to work together more than once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times. Sometimes with your seller, especially if they're moving out of town, that might be the first and last time you've ever met them and you'll ever see them. You know, buyers that are buying in town, hopefully they're going to become, you know, your loyal clients for life. However, what about our real estate industry? And right here in our little town of Chattanooga, we are co-oping, and I just don't want to let this point here pass without saying we have to work together. We should want to work together. I'm very hopeful that if you saw my name on a listing and you would bring a buyer and you'd gotten to know me, you're thinking, I'm looking forward to working with Marie. She'd be a good co-op agent to work with. As opposed to the opposite. Oh, Joe Smith. Oh, I hope my buyers don't like this house because that's going to be a train wreck just from the beginning. So that's why I'm leaning on that. Co-oping and communication is another strong part of bulletproofing our transaction. Deadlines and then strategies. So that's the fun stuff we're going to chit chat about today. And again, anybody that came in a few minutes late, and I know some of you know me, and I'm glad you're here, you know you can jump in with a question anytime. So what about this? Read this to yourself. Is this happening? Is this happening in our market? Do we feel like buyers think they're paying too much? Do you think some of our buyers might be paying too much?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's the feeling, I don't know in this particular market in Chattanooga, Tennessee, you know, April 2021, that our owners are flying too low. Some of my owners are saying, wow, who knew we could get that amount? However, in any shifting market, this could be the case. So just know that we've got buyers and sellers with a perspective of, the pain of either losing money from either side. So that can be the issue. So we want to be aware of the most common problems, being aware of as I said earlier, we're going to speak about both sides of the transaction, the seller's point of view and the buyer's point of view. So be aware of most of the common problems. I'm going to pause right there and say, cough first, I suppose. But I'm going to pause right there and just say the word empathetic, being an empath, being empathetic. How does that relate to working with your clients? This is interactive. I want to hear an answer.
To realize that they may not get the house they're wanting because they have to have a loan or they have to use FHA.
So we want to recognize that feeling, like it's not happening to us, but we need to be empathetic to their feelings. And what April just said about an FHA buyer, if that's the only type of financing they can qualify for, we're not going to beat them up about it. However, in this competitive market, there's going to be some cases where they're just not going to win. And we have to feel that with them, not for them, but with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think it's also just means like we do this daily. We may be working with more than one client at a time, and I think it's just important to understand each client's specific situation and how they may be feeling. Like one client may take it a little more personal than another that their offer didn't get accepted. So just meeting them where they are. Yes,
that is meeting them where they are. I love that. That was, and that's the same way as we know there's houses that obviously some people fall in love with and some people hate. It's like we all have different opinions about things, and we all have we're all coming from a different place, yet we as the common denominator, we are their realtor. We need to step in and feel a little bit about what they're feeling, and especially in this market where you might be a buyer, right, a buyer's agent, whether you're a solo agent or not, at the time that you're working with buyers and you're calling them for the 5th time or the 6th time to let them know they did not get awarded the winning contract. That's just brutal. It's hard. Yet, if you are thinking, well, I got another phone call, hey, you didn't get it, and you're not being empathetic to how they're feeling, that's just a common thing right now that's happening. I mean, who here has written more than one offer for any of their buyers? Hands? Anybody? Yep. Getting more than one offer. And I'm going to applaud you if you wrote one offer and you got it accepted and that was the winning one. I applaud that because it's exhausting. But anyway, so be aware of common problems, and common problems can be feelings. They can be, if it's a seller situation, a common problem that might occur as you as a listing agent, you keep getting feedback that's the same thing over and over. Hopefully you'll get that taken care of quickly. Having good solutions and scripts. Again, the empathy comes in helpful here. However, having those good solutions and scripts are just knowing what's going to happen next. When you know your journey, you can almost know what you're going to have to say next, right? Knowing the journey of the transaction. I mean, once you're in a contract, the earnest money is the next step. Then the inspection is the next step. Make sure you're getting ahead of all of that and knowing the journey and knowing what you're going to be able to share as expectations, with which I'm going to consider scripts. Some of those expectations you're going to be sharing in the form of something you say all the time, which is what? A script. Avoiding problems by addressing common concerns before they arise. That goes right along with what I just said. Know your journey, know the process, know what the transaction and how it's going to be laid out ahead of you, and share that with your buyer or your seller. And then maintaining good and frequent communication with all parties. Who here has clients that if you call them, they think like the world is ending because all you ever do is text because that's what they like, right? If you call them, they feel like, uh-oh, it's bad news. It doesn't matter. Whatever their communication style is, that's what you should know. That's what you should plan for. Plan to communicate the way they want you to communicate. So I did call someone the other day and she thought something was wrong. It's because I was in the car. She loves to text. That's all we ever do is text. I'm in the car. I'm not going to text and drive. No. And I called her and she's like, what's wrong? Anyway, I thought I'd throw that in there. But anyway, maintain good and frequent communication with all parties and maintain that communication the way they want to be communicated with. And if you're not calling them and that is their main communication desire, you might be turning them off because they might be thinking you're avoiding them. So do know that there's some people that phone call is the necessary thing to do. And then there's the people that they're like, phone call, what? Why we gotta do that? There's texting, there's email. That's much better, much more efficient. But anyway, so just so you do that. So here we go. These common problems, buyer's remorse. Have you ever bought something that you're like, oh man, I wish I hadn't done that? We just had one of the agents that I'm working with as in leadership here at the downtown office had an offer, and it was the strongest offer of multiple offers, and the seller had to counter because it was one of the escalation clauses and the only way they were going to know the price, so had to counter it. And the next morning the buyer didn't want to sign it. They had remorse that quickly. So that's okay. Here's my thing, and Sally's heard this, SW. Some will, some won't, so what? Someone's waiting. Someone was waiting. It was multiple offer. They got that under contract within hours. However, buyer's remorse is real. And especially, as we said in one of the first slides here, buyers might feel like they're paying too much, right? Inspections and repair, very common problem area. I don't want to say common problem. It's an area that we need to be very aware of and be walking with gently. And you may already have known that when you saw the house. However, how many of us have had inspections done and we're like, whoa, never saw that one coming. We can't see the roof. We're not crawling in the crawl space. And those are the two areas that something pops up probably out of, a very big surprise. And sometimes it's a surprise to the seller too. Appraisals, with this escalating market and the appraisers just to catch up with us. However, it's a reality. The appraisers are working for the lenders. They don't want to have them lending too much money on something that cannot appraise. So that's a common problem area with us in our shifting market. Loan approval and funding. I think that is one of the easiest places to bulletproof. If I say bullet point by accident, just forgive me. If we bulletproof, I think loan approval and funding is one of the easiest things. We can bulletproof our transaction by working with a local lender, a tried and true person, a reputable company. What more can I say? And how about pre-qualified well before they're looking for their first house? That's an area we can really get ahead of things and shouldn't take us by surprise. Shouldn't. Communication, that too, have a plan, know how you're going to communicate, and do it consistently. Consistently meaning when you are communicating with the other agent, make sure you're communicating with them about when the inspection is going to happen, the termite inspection, the home inspection. I had one the other day on one of my listings, they wanted to do a radon. So, I mean, wow, that surprised me. I'm like, okay, fine. We just make sure we communicate that. So communicating and not letting your buyer or your seller, whoever your client is, be blindsided by something that came out of the blue. Be the one that's communicating and helping them along the way. So buyer's remorse. How can we prevent this? So, whoops, sorry, meant to go further. Being proactive. So this says outcome the framing. What do you want to achieve? Well, may I guess from the top here that the buyer wants to buy this house. That's what they want to achieve. However, is it a person that's buying their first house and they're not handy, and they have some realistic concerns? However, is it a first-time buyer or a multi-time buyer and they're very, very handy? So don't put your expectations into this. Let's have their expectations. So your buyer is going to say, yeah, I don't mind a fixer-upper. However, are they an FHA buyer? It's all fine and dandy if Bob and Betty buyer say, oh, a fixer-upper is fine with me, Marie. Well, we'll get a fixer-upper. And then we get them pre-qualified and they are an FHA buyer. So those of us that are here today that have some familiarity, oh, it's such a hard word to say. Sorry, I shouldn't try. But those of us that are familiar with FHA loans, we know that safety is a concern. We know that we're not going to be able to tolerate, peeling paint or no railings on the deck or the steps going up to the front door or down the stairs. So there's some issues that we need to share with Bob and Betty buyer, that if they are looking for a fixer-upper, that's fine and dandy, yet their financing might not be the way we can make that happen. Flip that around to a seller. The seller doesn't want to fix up some things, and there are no railings around the front porch, and there's unfinished floor. They ripped up the carpet and it's plywood, and they're like, oh, well, we'll just let the buyers choose their own flooring. Well, we're not going to be able to go FHA on that as well. And in our market, FHA there's a lot of FHA purchases in our market. And you can check that on the statistics on the MLS just to see, and you might recognize with sellers that if they can be looking at inviting FHA loans for buyers, FHA buyers, they might have a larger pool. Now, I say this in this market of cash and conventional crushing the FHA buyers. Just recognizing those of us that, we want to be familiar with the process. We want to know the journey. I always say that, I'm the realtor. I'm gonna drive in my lane. However, I know what's going on in the lanes next to me. I know what the lenders are doing. I know what the home inspectors are doing. I'm not a home inspector and I'm not a lender. So just knowing enough, and then the other thing I say is I know just enough to be dangerous. However, it's not dangerous to know what small portions of what you need to implement in your strategies with, perhaps in this case, listing a home. You're not going to list it FHA if you are identifying in your walkthrough that there are things that Sam and Sally seller are saying, no, I'm not going to fix these things. So then we know we can bulletproof the listing by not inviting financing that's going to be problematic. Does that make sense? Okay, good. I'm seeing some nods, so at least I know you're listening. Yay! So thank you for that. Setting those expectations, it really wraps around with pretty much some of the ideas that I just mentioned, and preparing alternatives, the what ifs. It's in this market. Sally and I were just talking about this right before the class started. I used to feel, we talk about win-win or no deal. Our Y4C2Ts of Keller Williams, win-win or no deal. I subscribe to that fully, 100%. However, the winning of the buyers recently is not being able to walk away saying, yes, they paid my closing costs. Yes, they fixed everything I asked for. Yes, I got way lower than the list price, because those were my winning buyers in the past, right, Sally? Those were our days behind us, winning buyers. Now I'm telling my buyers, you know what? The win-win is you're going to get to buy a house. That's your win. Now, I say that, gently and somewhat casually. It's the truth. This market, and I know right here, I'm looking at one of you. You know who you are. You just had a chaotic couple of days because you listed a beautiful house in Hickson, right? Go on. You cannot. Anyway, and it's chaotic. And the buyer that wins it really just needs to be like, yay, I won. Yay, I probably paid who knows how many thousands of dollars over list. I won though. So those of us that are working with buyers, it's a little harder to have them get excited. You have to share with them what to get excited about. And that is being the winning offer of a dozen others. Does that make sense? I've got buyers that are giving up. They're saying, we're going to go rent. We've got buyers who are exhausted right now. Those of us that are working with buyers, we know they're exhausted right now. So this last one, reassuring we're on track and doing fine. I sure hope we get to do that in our journey together when we're working with our buyers and our sellers. So these triggers, let's look at these. Who has been dealing with this? The news reports makes them sure they've made the worst decision of their life. They've paid way too much. Their friends are telling them, you're crazy to buy a house right now. Thank you, friends. Those are also the in-laws. those are also, the cousins that bought a house 5 years ago, and they got the seller to pay their closing costs, and they got X number of dollars off the list price. You're paying above list price? Yes, hello, hashtag 2021. Yes, they are.
Yeah,
Right?
and also the closing costs too, Marie, on that. There's so many people that have the luxury of having the seller pay their closing costs that that's going to be a conversation that pops up too.
Yep. And Sally and I remember back when that started to be a thing, that the lenders, gosh, that was like early 2000s, that all of a sudden lenders were opening up this opportunity that they were allowing the sellers to pay the buyer's closing costs. So much so that fast forward 10 or 15 years, it's become so much of the norm that I've got buyers entering the market that they're like, well, the seller has to do that, right? No. That's why it's called a buyer's closing costs. That's why in section 2 of our Tennessee Association of Realtors Purchase and Sale Agreement, there's a paragraph called buyer's expenses, and there's another paragraph called seller's expenses. So not that I ever get sassy, and a lot of you know me, I don't get very sassy, but I say that's why they're labeled buyer's closing costs. You can ask the seller for a favor and ask them to pay your closing costs. And that's what we were doing for a good 15 or more years. However, right now, that's not going to get you the winning offer. And I can also say, I've got examples across the board here on these. And around Christmas, I had some buyers say to me, you know what, we're not even buying anything for Christmas. And they had a small family, and they said, we're not buying anything for Christmas. We're saving every penny, because they kept losing out last fall on offers because they couldn't pay their own closing costs. Well, we closed on a house last month because they won their offer, and the way they were able to step it up is they paid their own closing costs.
Wow.
And that was a big difference. And in their price point, I think it was like $7,500. I was very proud of them. I was very proud that they did that. They knew after losing out on, I think maybe just like 3 or 4, which doesn't sound like many to me anymore, but it hurt, that losing hurt. So anyway, they stepped it up and were able to become homeowners, and they knew that the only way they could do that was, and they, in a sense, and we're talking about bulletproofing the transaction, they bulletproofed their opportunity. They stepped it up. And I was proud of them for doing that. So anyway, this buyer remorse stuff, these are the people talking in their ears and saying these things. do know their coworkers are saying it, their neighbors are saying it, their friends are saying it. And it, like I said, it doesn't say on here in-laws, but the in-laws are saying it too.
Hey, Marie,
Yep.
I've heard previously too, especially around this, that you can go ahead and set up your buyers to know they're going to feel this. Hey, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that you're probably going to have a time that you have some cold feet. You're going to hear people talking to you, and they're going to tell you things that are going to make you second guess. I just need you to pick up the phone and call me when you start having those feelings, because I'm going to remind you of why we went through the steps and the decisions that we went through. And I'm going to reassure you that everything's okay. I just want you to know it's perfectly normal that that's going to happen to you.
And you know what? Now, everybody on here that knows Sally loves Sally, and I love Sally. I love you so much. Look at this. The next slide. Boom. I'm gonna change that quote to say Sally. Hey.
No, you know what? I am going to let you do your slides, Marie.
Oh, I love it. No, what Sally just did was reiterated something that wasn't even mentioned yet. That's the truth, though. This is you, Sally. You just made it so real, and I love you for it. It's so true. It's the reality is there are going to be times during this process with the buyer when their friends are talking in their ear, or the inspection comes back with. When the inspection comes back with some things that need to be addressed or corrected, and the seller's willing to do it, I'm looking at that as a win, wouldn't you? So when they get those people, speaking in their ears, we need to do what Sally told us to do, and that is remind them. You don't want to go back to the drawing board, especially in this market. You told me you want to be out of that apartment so you can be in the new house and have the freedom to, do whatever, garden, make your own garden this year instead of, being in an apartment. So just what Sally said, just remind them, bring them back to their motivation to be a homeowner, and depending if you're in the contract to close process, bring them back to, you don't want to restart this process. So that's a good one. And I'm going to change that quote to Sally Hayes, Chattanooga, Tennessee.
That made me so happy.
The next time I teach this, it's going to say it. So, okay, let me get myself back on track here. So the seller's remorse, guess what? It happens. I don't know very many sellers that aren't doing happy dances right now. So it's probably the remorse thing on the seller side is a little less of a concern. I'd be surprised if you had this, if there was, the seller's remorse might be, they didn't really want to sell after all, but they kind of did it for the financial part of it. And a few of you know what I did recently. Somebody wanted to buy my house and gave me a number, and it was not listed. And I said, okay. And I had a little bit of remorse, but then I remembered how much money I was making. So, but the little bit of remorse kind of made me feel like, man, I wish I could turn back the hands of time, because this is, so I felt it. Anyway, it happens, and I just don't know that, it's happening as much now, but this is what we can do. Doing a CMA, reminding them of their costs. Again, I'm playing this down because I don't see it happening right now in this market. I do have some sellers that I know if the wife could put the kibosh on this sale, she would, because she doesn't want to move across the country, and they are doing that. I actually did that 31 years ago, and if I would have rented a house just after we sold our house, not to move to Tennessee. But I'm rather glad I did. It's been a good 30 years here in the South, and that's just reminding themselves about their destination. If their destination is something they want to go to. And anyway, I'm not spending a lot of time on this because it's not really where we are in our market. So this right here, guys, this is strong. I do know that people get a little antsy on both sides. It's like, you know how when you've made a decision, don't you just want to make it happen? Just get on with it. So you can reduce the time by closing as soon as possible, reduce the possibility of them getting those cold feet or having more friends talk in their ear and whatnot. It gets a little, it just, I think we can all agree with that, making that closing as early as possible. We still have to do the probably typical 21, 30 days, for the time for inspections and appraisals. But what we're talking about here that last one, those 45 and 65 day closes, those are a little brutal. Anyone that's experienced them, they're brutal. So early response for staying on track, constant communication. Here's something that I'll even say, I'll start with, it might not be bulletproofing a transaction because you're not quite under contract yet. However, if you're a listing agent and you've got 18 offers, I get it that you're like in the middle of chaos and it's making you half crazy. However, letting the buyer's agents know, because those buyer's agents have buyers that have written an offer on a house that they want to know about. So the constant communication, can I say prior to even the transaction being under contract, be a good listing agent with those offers and be in communication with those buyer's agents. And I do feel like a text is good communication because phone calls can get a little lengthy, especially when there's 18 buyer's agents because there's 18 offers, right? And they all want to like somehow convince you to take theirs on the phone. Yeah, no, I got time for that. So anyway, inspecting expectations. How about making sure that your buyer has realistic expectations, your seller has realistic expectations? You need to know what they are. That's what it means by inspecting expectations. Do not assume. It says, don't make any assumptions. Do not assume that your buyer, and maybe because they bought a house in the past and you think, well, they know how to do this. Don't do that. Because life is different. And really, who knows if they even pay attention the first time they bought it. And now they're trying to pay better attention. I know I bought 2 houses early in my life, in my 20s. And back when we used one of these, let's see. We used one of these things. It's a pen, it's got ink in it. And we used to sign our name with it. Well, back then they put that in front of me and told me to sign it, and I signed it. That's all I did. So believe me, I didn't know a thing about what I did with our first purchase and our first sale. I didn't pay any attention. So if the second time I was doing it, I paid a little bit more attention, but at least I knew what was going on. So don't assume because somebody's done it before that they know how to do it. Problem solving, that goes really back to, all of this goes back to knowing your journey, knowing your contracts. I'm going to pause right there. You are the author. If you're a buyer's agent, you are the author of this offer. Right, Kaylee? Right? We talk about this. We are, I just picked on you because you're sitting there looking all cute. So, but we are the author of this offer. Don't you think we should know what this journey looks like? I'd like to see a few nods. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah,
we
totally.
should.
Yep. So that's where the expectations and the contract to close tracking. And for those of you, if you haven't done many contracts yet, utilize what the TAR, the Tennessee Association of Realtors, and I always speak about Tennessee. I know a lot of us are licensed in Georgia as well. However, use one of the timeline checklist. Those are created for us to stay on track. Good deal? Okay. So anybody that's got experience, let's throw out it can be funny. If it's going to make us cry, we got to go get some tissues, but I don't want to have any, I want to hear if anybody's got examples or something they'd like to talk about, because you're listening to me this whole time. We could use a break. We're not giving you a break. I'm just asking you to speak. Let's see. Kelly, were you going to say something?
No, I wasn't my usual chiming in, but I do have a recent buyer's remorse. I mean, someone purchased a home because their family was growing and they needed it under a couple of months time period because a baby was on the way. And now the baby's here and they're like, is it a little tight or is it good enough? But some people who just had to make a decision quick sometimes. In this market, you have to.
Yep.
And we're lucky to get something, right?
Yeah. So yeah, we need motivated buyers. So their motivation changed, I guess. Anybody want to share anything else about that? It's okay, because we got some more traumatic things to talk about. We got inspections coming up. Oh, we'll talk about that. So with inspections, again, knowing the journey. So I just had a listing go under contract. They're like, what do we do now? I pretty much said, sit around and wait. Because I mean, when you list, especially in this market, you're listing it one day and maybe you're going to, delay the responses of offers. So maybe it's like 3 or 4 days, but between, getting the house staged, getting the house photographed, getting all the documents signed in dot loop and the seller's disclosure and having the photography done, those sellers are like, lots of stuff going on. And then we're looking at negotiating or reviewing 6, 7, 8, 10 offers. So it's a lot of energy. And then when they say, now what? I'm like, I get to sit back and wait a little while. You get to sit back and wait, just chill for a little bit, because we're going to wait for the buyer to have the inspection. So preparing the seller what to expect. And in our market, we will have known how many days when we accepted that contract, accepted that offer, what the contractual days are for their inspection. So we know it's going to happen sooner than later, clearly. So we can remind them of what the days are. We can also remind them of how we operate in our market, and that is with the inspection occurring. And it might be that the buyers may need to do additional inspections, further evaluation on the roof, further evaluation on the HVAC, and then let them know that there's that deadline of the buyer's response for the end of the deadline for the inspections. And what begins then? One of 3 things is going to happen then, and we want our sellers to know that. In reality, one of 3 things is going to happen. They're either going to terminate the agreement based on a poor inspection. They're going to say, hey, this inspection went fabulous. We're not going to ask the seller for anything, and we're going to send a notification form indicating they're accepting it as is. Or the third one, which I think even in this market personally is still the most used option, and that is asking the sellers to replace and or repair specific things. So we want to tell our seller that, say, well, they can do one of 3 things at the end of the inspection period. And if you want to further say, it's mostly typical that a buyer is going to provide a list of repairs, and then let them know what that journey is. So we have a resolution period in our Tennessee Association of Realtors paragraph in section 7 that says resolution period. Well, did that buyer's agent write 3 days or did they write 5 days? Whatever it is, we know that the resolution period is the time frame when we're going to talk back and forth and come to a resolution. And we have to come to a resolution. There's no dilly-dallying, because if we don't come to a resolution or extend that resolution period, somebody tell me what might happen, not what might happen, what will happen at the end of the resolution period. If there's no resolution, what happens?
The contract terminates.
Contract terminates. Thank you, Karen. It's not like it might, or it could, or it will, or it will. It will. And that's the language in our Tennessee Association of Realtors, section 7, under inspections. You need to know that. So if the sellers say, it's the weekend, I don't want to talk about it, they don't get to not talk about it. Just setting up those expectations, okay? So preparing our sellers what to expect in their market. What else? Acknowledging their feelings and concerns. if they have them. I always like to say, anything else? Any more questions? Those of you that are in classes with me a lot, you know that I treat you the same way I treat my buyers. I ask questions, as many as I can think of, and then I say, anything else? Anything else? Because I may not have asked my buyer or my seller the one thing that was on their mind. So when I say anything else, they get to say, yeah, as a matter of fact, there was that other thing. So give them that chance so that they're going to be comfortable. And again, we're speaking about sellers right now. I mean, think about your right now, you live in your house. You're making maybe family memories, maybe fur baby memories. I don't know what kind of memories you're making. I know at the Hayes household, Sally's got lots of fun going on at her household all the time. And you know, if you were selling your house, that's an emotional thing, right? So there's that. However, if the sellers are acting a little funky, ask them, are you willing to risk losing your buyer? And you're going to find out you get some true expectations there. Maybe there is some seller's remorse. So this last one, it almost crossed my mind to like take it off of this slide. Instead, I decided I would open it up for conversation. So my thought around suggesting a pre-inspection is it's not a seller's responsibility to find out what's wrong with their house. Now, if they have deferred maintenance and they have not been taking care of it and they are clueless as to what might be wrong with it, maybe that is a good time frame to say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if you're willing to get a home inspection, I also need you to be willing to fix some of the things that they find that need to be corrected. So this last bullet point saying, suggesting a pre-inspection, I would discuss it with the seller. And if they say, no, we're not going to fix anything until somebody tells us to, they might get one. Am I right? Am I wrong? I don't know. Tell me, anybody got a comment about that?
Marie, I think a lot of times they already probably know what's going to show up.
Yeah. And in that case, I mean, they are filling out the Tennessee Residential Property Condition Disclosure if they've lived there. They need to fill out what they know. So in this case, if they're not doing an inspection, if they don't know, like when I told you I sold my house in January, one thing was wrong with it. Like four things, but only one place, the roof. I had no idea. When was the last time you were on your roof? Now, when I was 12, I did jump off our roof and broke both my arms. So that was the last time I was ever on a roof, just saying. And that's the truth. Anyway, so yeah, how many times that could happen, you know, not knowing, well, falling off roof, breaking your arms, that can happen. And not knowing what's wrong with your roof could happen. So, you know, you could have that inspected, perhaps. So anyway, so how are we doing? What do you think? You learning anything? You got some little things going on in your mind, like, oh yeah, I need to be a little bit more attentive to what to be thinking about. And
Ahas, don't you think?
What's that, Sal?
Let's have some ahas.
Yes, this is a great time. Anything that has changed your way of thinking since, what time is it? Since 1 o'clock today, the past 45 minutes?
I'm gonna start making like contact with even non-clients almost every day, you know, just something, you know.
Sure. Yes. Thank you for whoever said that. Appreciate that.
It's me, Rachel.
Oh, okay. Hey, Rachel.
Yeah. Hey.
I can't see everybody on here. So as far as ahas, and I appreciate Sally asking that, I mean, are we realizing that knowing the journey, knowing our contracts, because again, this class isn't so much about lead generation. It's not about, your database. It's about you got a house under contract, whether you're the listing agent or the buyer's agent, we're under contract. Let's hold tight to it. Let's hold tight. And let's get all of us walking down that journey together to the closing table.
I guess the biggest aha I had is, even though I was aware that people are saying these prices are crazy, I wasn't thinking about how many sources they're hearing that from, so.
Oh yeah, well, Karen, you know my story about the young couple with the in-laws that always had to have something to say.
Yes.
They even named their in-laws Gloom and Doom.
I remember that story.
Remember that?
I do.
Gloom and Doom. And those were the in-laws. So I said, and this is the way, again, we are talking today about bulletproof in the transaction. So we are talking about contract to close. However, I couldn't even get to a contract with this couple. So I said, well, you know what? From now on, all seven of us are going to go looking at houses. Well, that changed quickly. That's when the wife said, oh, no, that's not going to happen. Anyway, that's a true story. My stories are true, mostly. I'll tell you if they're not. I'll tell you if I made them up. But anyway, so let's talk about our buyers. So recommending inspectors we trust. Come on, that to me is like, duh. Here's the thing. If we are brand spanking new in this business, let's talk to another realtor that we trust and ask them who they recommend. Let's not go with the flashiest logo or your favorite colors in the logo of the inspector. I'm just messing around a little bit here. I am looking to make sure that you are vetting these inspectors as people that you can trust through the trust of someone else, if it's not your own experience. So I'll tell you, it's a hard thing as an experienced realtor, been around for a while. One of my favorite inspectors had to have knee surgery or back surgery or something. Anyway, out of the game for a number of months. So I had to find a new one. It's just hard to really trust somebody. And I've gotten to that point, it's such an important thing. When I'm telling my buyers, here's 3 names of inspectors that I really like, they are going to sometimes ask me who's my favorite. And I don't mind telling them who it is. I tell them why. And the why is usually they have enough areas of expertise, but don't flaunt it like they are the one and only person that knows what's going on. They recognize there's further evaluation that should occur by more people with more expertise, maybe a roofer, an electrician, or a plumber. I also like communication, the way it's delivered, like not an alarmist. I like inspectors that indicate in their report, these are things to watch for. These are things I'd correct quickly. These are safety concerns. So really identifying safety. And then of course, then there's the keep your eye out on this kind of list. So that's the way I choose the inspectors. And if you are choosing a new inspector, ask them to send you a sample inspection so you'll know what it looks like and how well you can assist in communicating the information on that. So anyway, I probably spent a lot of time on that. And any thoughts, questions, those of us that are out there working and do have some inspector, I'm not asking you to say your inspectors' names, but how about a reason you choose your inspectors? Anybody want to mention anything further?
I think you mentioned pretty much everything is one of the reasons why I like who I use.
Mhm.
I also like that they're not expensive and they offer a free re-inspection. So my buyers tend to like that too. So if there's something that we did ask the sellers to fix and we want to make sure it's done properly, like they'll come back out and they'll check for no additional cost just to make sure it's done, give us a new report showing that it's done. And that way they're comfortable, I'm comfortable, and it's all good. So.
Ooh, I like that. I don't even know if my favorite inspector offers free re-inspections. I think we're all gonna be calling our folks today and finding out. Hey, that's great. I like that. Thank you for sharing that. Something I just learned.
Mine,
So anyway,
mine.
sorry?
I was going to throw one in there. Mine, they're able to get in as soon as possible. So like if you call them, they might be able to get in within a few days.
And that's great too. I find that that's part of the reason I do at least 12 days, because my favorite ones I can't get as very quickly. So thank you for whoever said that. Appreciate that. So educate the buyers about where you are in the process of what comes next. I mean, truly with the inspections, they're just as on high alert as the seller is. The seller is sitting there biting their nails, wondering what's wrong with their house because they have no idea. And again, I almost think that every realtor should buy a house and sell a house, like frequently. I'm kidding. Truly though, indicating that, because so you can really, if you don't have the empathy gene in your DNA, you will really feel it when you go through it, because you are wondering, I love my house. It's a great house. There's nothing wrong with this house. I'm sure of that. But you wait 10 days to find out, you are waiting and you are wondering. However, making sure that both your buyers and your sellers know where we are in the process of what comes next. Reminding the buyers that inspectors document everything they see. That is what I said a few moments ago, the people that I like, and they're not alarmists. They document everything they see, and the ones that I like the best are kind of, they give it the kind of the rating, the safety rating, the watch out for this rating, and then the things to focus on right now. So, and this last bit right here, helping our buyers focus on the big picture, on the important issues. So is a leaky faucet really as concerning, especially if the buyer's best friend is a plumber? Let's focus on, the broken or the inoperable sump pump. Let's focus on that. Let's focus on, something that really could be a detriment to the house. Water is a detriment to the house. We like it in the shower and we like it in the dishwasher and the washing machine, but we don't like it around our foundation, and we don't like it in our crawl space. So let's focus on those things. And I say that it's individual to every single inspection. Please know that. Yeah, and that is why it's saying help the buyers focus on the big picture and the issues. So answering all of your buyers' questions. And here's the thing, isn't it possible that you don't know the answer? Yeah. You're going to help them find the answer. That's why they're going to have further evaluation, by a plumber on, the issues that the home inspector found. That's why they're going to recommend further evaluation on the roof, on maybe age is up there in years, and they just want to have another set of eyes on there. You can't say, oh yeah, that roof, it's 15 years old, it's done deal. There. You're not that, no, well, unless you're a roofer. I don't know if we have any roofers here. However, that's, you might not have the answer. You can help find the answer though. So get all the answers, all the questions answered. Knowing what's on your customer's mind, that's where you're asking questions. You're asking questions. They're asking a question about something. How about this script? And I know all of us that have been around for a while, and every one of you that have been in my Ignite classes and Sally's Ignite classes, we've all said, what about that's important to you? I remember when I first started learning these scripts 15 years ago, when I started training at Keller Williams in the East Brainerd office. And I learned, what about that's important to you? And I had used that on Rachel and Nathan, and they're like, are you using those scripts again? Because I'd never said that before to them. But start asking your family members, what about that's important to you? And you'll begin to get comfortable asking that question to your buyers and sellers, because it seems like a very prying question to me. And I will just tell you, when I was a little girl, my Grammy said, mind your own business. We threw that and don't get in the car with strangers. We do both of those things now. We do not mind our own business. What else about that is important to you? Let's get in their business, and then let them get in our car with us. All those things our grandparents taught us, our parents. Throw it out the window. Anyway, I strayed from the topic here. Let's go back to So know what's on your customer's mind by asking questions. Keep the small issues small. Like I said, you know, a broken doorknob of a closet is a big different than a broken doorknob to the front door. Now we have a safety issue at the front door, right? That's just an example. Let's keep the small things small. Broken doorknob in the closet. Okay, we can get that fixed. We can ask for it to be fixed. Let's focus on the stuff that's really important first. Okay. And here's something else. And I know anybody here that knows me well knows I've got the vendors, and it all came from way back 21 years ago when I got licensed in real estate. I thought I need to be the source of some assistance here. My buyer's saying, who do you know that can fix my roof? Or my sellers are saying that. Or the buyer is saying, well, how am I going to know what's wrong with the plumbing if we don't have a plumber come out? I mean, what was my answer going to be? Heck if I know. That was not my answer. My answer was to build relationships with vendors and know vendors. So those of us that have been in Ignite and we know we're doing our daily 10-4, make one day 10 phone calls to vendors and say, you know what? I don't know any electricians. I need a go-to electrician. Can I put you in my phone book? Can I put you in my phone book? Did I say that? Anyway, you know what I meant. So vendors, get those vendor relationships going so that as soon as someone says, I need a roofer or I need a plumber, you're like, okay, boop, 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 here you go. And for my vendors, I have their contact card completely filled out. So it's like, it's their email if I've got one, or, their phone number, their full name, their company name. I want it to feel really legit. I don't want to just send you a plumber's name that just says Joe Schmo and here's his name. And you'll be like, was that the plumber? Oh yeah, it's plumber. My contact, if I'm sending it to you, it's going to say he's a plumber and his company name. So get those vendors and guide the buyers through the next steps. Guys, they're relying on you. Probably the biggest part of Bulletproof in this transaction is you. Knowing the journey and guiding them. So the inspection, granted, there's times, and I know, some of us here, we've had our contracts fall through because of inspections. Totally legit. However, it is a real shame when they fall apart and they're not really legit. And it really feels a lot like what we talked about earlier, just buyer's remorse. And that's when I'm going to say, Bob and Betty buyer, is this something you really want to start over? Or are you going to let this broken doorknob in the closet, shut this deal down? That wasn't really an example. I've never had that happen, but anyway. So it is just don't let the inspection be a reason to back out of the contract if it's less than legit. Anybody want to add to that? I know you've had experiences.
I don't think I've really had like super bad experiences. Well, I'll just say this. In my buyer consultations, I try to bring it up in the beginning. So I try to set the expectations of, we're explaining the process. And I go ahead and mention the inspections because I know that in the past, it's been like a pain point. So I just try to get ahead of it and say, hey, we're going to get this long report that's going to look like there's so much things wrong with the house. But these are the major parts that we care about. And then so when inspection day comes, hey, bring your tape measure, we're going to measure. Remember, when you get that report, it's going to look like a whole bunch of stuff. I just try to prepare them so that when they do get it, it's not like, oh my gosh, what is this? And I find that is helpful.
I like that, Jasmine. And I like that pain point. I'm gonna remember that. I want to start using that in my vocabulary. But yeah, that's just recognizing what is it might be their pain point and get ahead of that. So great information. So as far as that negotiation and being that point person, knowing the vendors, and getting people out there as quickly as possible, so you can find out how much the repairs might cost. And it says, and listen to the other agent as your ally, whether you're the buyer's agent or the listing agent, you are both working on this together. And it's not really laid out as, oh, the buyers have to get the quotes, or, oh, the sellers have to get the quotes. This resolution period, this is everybody, all hands on deck. Everybody is working hard to get to the resolution. And a lot of times it comes down to, what's it going to cost? Is the seller needs to know, well, if the seller isn't jumping to it, the buyer needs to send out those people to get the quotes. So there's a lot of this negotiation, and it's a very tight time frame too. Very tight time frame. You might need to extend the resolution period. However, adopting that mindset, let's make it work. The negotiation and the skill that you have with your communication. And again, now let me go back to the way the home inspector is going to deliver that information about the broken this or not so well working that, or, possibly a hole in the roof here. It just depends on how he delivers that. If it's going to blow it up out of proportion, and the buyers are going to want to walk away with no correction requests by the seller. So, and recognizing also that the seller doesn't have to have those repairs done during the resolution period. I've had that question asked to me by both sides. The seller's like, do I have to have this done before the resolution period's over? I'm like, no. It's before closing, or before the time frame set out in the repair replacement amendment at the very bottom of that page. That once the amendment becomes a contractual agreement, it says there's a blank line, and you might put in 4 days. So 4 days prior to closing, we're getting those sellers to agree to have those repairs or replacements done, so you can go back and inspect them. And this actually has occurred in the last sort of handful of years or so. And what's created is it's kind of created you going back, not 2 final inspections, but 2 inspections. Final being final. That's the one before closing. Yet you're going to go back, and instead of going like an hour before closing, which is what we used to do for our final inspection, and then during that time, we're checking out those 6, 7, 8, 9 things that the seller agreed to repair, and we're checking them out an hour before closing, not such a good idea. So in the repair replacement amendment, there's a blank line at the bottom that indicates the seller will agree to have these items repaired or replaced this X number of days prior to closing. So you and your buyers have that expectation to go back, and I would call a listing agent and say, hey, are the repairs done? It was 3 days before closing that they said they'd have it done. Oh yeah, they're done. Come on. So we'll make an appointment to do that. Does that make sense? Those of us that have been doing some of this out there on the streets, I just want to make sure that you're paying attention to that opportunity. So any questions or thoughts about that?
I'm going to stop after this. I'm going to stop adding my 2 cents. But yes, because I used to do that, and it bit me in the butt one time. We went over there the day of closing, the morning of closing, and the things were not done completely. And it was a mess. We ended up closing, but it was a mess. I had the buyers, and so the seller's agent ended up giving some of his commission to help for the repairs, to help pay for the repairs, because the sellers were basically like, yeah, we didn't do it and we're not going to do it, and screw it. If they don't want the house, forget it. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Yes, days before, not the day of closing, days before.
Right. So what you're saying, Jasmine, is you're totally on board with this. Let's go back and check the repairs. And that really, like I said, it's probably been a handful of years only that we've had that now as a part of somebody said, hey, wait a minute, we don't need to be doing this the way like Jasmine just shared, because that's just chaos. And I hate seeing anybody reduce their commission, because last time I went to the dentist or doctor and things didn't go my way, they didn't say, hey, you know what, let me pay for most of your bills. That's my way of saying you're a professional and it's not your house. It's not your house. I don't like to see listing agents pay for a seller's mistake or a buyer's agent who has worked really hard to give up their commission. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, you've worked hard for it and you're a professional, and to be given up. Anyway, that's a whole nother story, right, Sally? It's a whole nother story. So anyway, just a couple things here. Home warranties, I mean, they are fabulous. They're getting pricey, yet, you know, they do cover some good things. I don't ever want to think that you would say, oh, get a home warranty, it'll cover everything, because you're lying. It does not. So they are great. And if it's something that your buyer or your seller chooses to attach to this transaction, make sure they know what they're getting for that. So I'll just leave that right there, because they're all different. So it's just an opportunity. So what are your best practices for resolving inspection issues? Jasmine shared some great information about going ahead and following what the repair replacement amendment allows us to do. And that is to check with the seller's agent and say, hey, are those repairs done? The buyer and I would like to go over this weekend and check on them. So anything else? So anybody want to add to this in answering that question? It can be a chaotic time.
Hey, I'll just say from the seller side on inspections, I usually recommend I usually have awesome sellers, but they usually will make little videos of repairs once they're finished, and just, you know, the sooner that I can forward all of that information on and pictures and what have you, that seems to go over really well, just for the communication, and eases everyone's mind that, you know, we're on the repairs and they're getting taken care of.
That is great, Kelly. I do love that when the listing agent and the seller are communicating that the work has been done, and a video or a picture of that correction. Yeah, that goes a long way. That's a great one. Great advice. Anybody else? Well, we're going to move into funding. So I had talked to you about funding, and again, it says here, regardless of which side you represent, having the buyer use a reputable and trustworthy lender, and I'll even add local. And I know, I mean, look at us here. You know, I could be in California right now doing this, right? I know that our world has really gotten larger. However, the local lender just makes you feel that they're tangible, and they can be just a resource, like just drive up to their office if necessary, if the buyer needs their hand held. However, it's kind of rare that our clients are meeting with lenders the way they meet with us, like for our buyer rep or our listing appointment, and certainly showing houses. However, there's still something valid about a local lender. Somehow they have the contacts, they have the local appraisers, they just have a handle on the market. So I think many of us have seen listings in the MLS where the listing says local lenders preferred. And that's the reason. Not because, you know, well, I'll tell you what, when I have had a lender like in California or Pacific Time, it's like, really? I mean, I can't get anything out of them until noon our time, because that's 9 o'clock, that's 9 a.m. their time. So that's another reason I see as having a local lender. So here we are on the buyer side. Make sure your buyers are pre-approved. I mean, how many of us value our time? And I'll tell you what, I love to work. I love to work. I do not like to waste my time. Anybody with me on that? Right? So let's
Me.
not waste our time. Let's only work with buyers that are going to be buying. Okay. Just saying. Okay. Making sure they're pre-approved. And they might not know of somebody, you know, they don't have their brother didn't just buy a house and recommends his lender, or, you know, their neighbor says, oh, my cousin's a lender, you got to use him. If they don't, you have the contacts. So go ahead and you be that one and offer 2 or 3 names. And same way I do with inspectors, I let them know who and why I'm recommending and who I might think might be a best fit for them. And then let them decide. Let them decide. This right here, and I actually haven't done this in a long time, but is a great idea, having a backup lender. Now, probably because my buyers are working with people that I've recommended, and I have full confidence in those lenders. Maybe if it was somebody that I didn't have a lot of confidence in, I might be asking them to do a backup and let that second lender know. And that would probably be one of the people I recommended, that they could pick up the pieces quickly if something fell apart with that first lender. Has anybody been a listing agent or, well, a buyer's agent and had a buyer's lender absolutely say they were pre-qualified, and then all of a sudden something changes? Nothing in the buyer's financial situation changed, but all of a sudden the lender hadn't noticed a certain part of the way their income was. I've had teachers that are contract teachers, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, they're not really employed by Hamilton County Department of Education. So that changes things. And it's like, really? You didn't see that in the beginning? What? So having a backup would not be a bad idea. So I like this. Let's see. Well, it's not the next page, but we're going to be seeing something shortly, and it's the 10 commandments of lending. Like, thou shalt not go buy a motorcycle. Thou shalt not open more credit card accounts. So, whoops, sorry. I went out of. All right, here we go. Okay, so having the difference between pre-qualified and pre-approved, I'm imagining most of us know the answer to this. And pre-qualified is they've talked to the lender on the phone, they've pretty much given enough information, the lender may have taken a peek at their credit. Pre-approved is when they have kind of put the paperwork to what they've said verbally. So the lender is in a much better case. I mean, because I can call you, if you're a lender, I call you and tell you I make X number of dollars and, you know, whatever I've got and a few of my debts. And then until I actually provide the documentation to back up what I told you, I'm not going to get pre-approved. Okay. So that's the difference there. So here's our thou shalt nots. Okay. The 10 commandments for loan approval or loan application. So don't change jobs or quit your job. And I'm going to tell you a quick story on this one. So I had a client who just about 2 weeks before closing called me or texted me or something and told me she changed email addresses. I thought, well, okay, that's, you know, random, right? But okay, that's fine. So what I didn't pay attention to when she gave it to me, the new one, was that the old one was a company name. And now this new one was like a, you know, susieq@gmail.com. I didn't pay attention to that until I did pay attention to it. And then I realized she had quit her job. The other email was for her job, and now she didn't have a job. And you know what she said to me? But when I called her and asked her that, I said, what's going on? I said, you still working? And she goes, no, I quit. I'm like, that's not a good idea. And she goes, well, don't tell Brian. That's our lender. I'm like, it's my next phone call. Let me just tell you that right now. So anyway, I didn't see that coming. Anyway, it all worked out fine because she got another job. But when she changed emails, let me tell you what, if you ever call me and say you're changing the email, I am asking questions from now on. So anyway, thou shalt not buy a car, truck, or a van. And what does it say? Or you might be living in it. Don't use charge cards excessively or let accounts fall behind. With our buyers, they'll say, you mean I can never use my charge card again? Say, just don't use it differently than you've been using it. Or talk to the lender about that. Okay? So I hope you're reading these as they're on the screen. Anybody have a question about any of these? I'll tell you, when it says don't make any large deposits without first checking with your loan officer, that's a doozy. And I'll tell you what, I know some of you, if you're applying for a loan and then you have a closing and you got $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 deposited into your account, it'll be easy enough to prove because it came from the office, but the lender is going to say, where'd that come from? Right? So anyway, don't change bank accounts and do not co-sign a loan for anyone. That's good advice for every day. So anyway, that's pretty cool right there for you to share with your buyers not to do. And you and your lender, need to share that information. So, so has anybody got a story about a financing problem that they may have encountered?
I'm working with some renters. They originally were going to be buyers. So this is Rachel, by the way. They were originally going to be buyers, but when they talked to a lender, it came out that they actually had nothing for a down payment. So, and their credit was not ready. So they couldn't get any kind of a loan because of that.
Yep. So that's where, hopefully as the lender consults with them, because lenders can become consultants and just say, if you will do this, that, and the other, come back in 6 months. So a really great lender will do some consulting. If there's no way they can buy now, hopefully that's not a no forever. It's just a no for right now. So anybody else?
Yeah.
And wouldn't you say where it's saying, what do you do to avoid funding problems? Getting them with a local bona fide lender, bona fide. I don't think I've used that word in a while, but a local reputable lender. So now appraisals. So those of us that are out there working in the field right now and working with our listings, and we're getting these above list price offers, don't you get a little nervous about it appraising? Do you? Anybody? So appraisals have become a big deal with these escalating costs and escalation clauses that we're putting in our offers, and then the offers are then getting accepted. So this question here, what can a real estate agent do to make sure the buyer gets an adequate loan to make the purchase? That's just getting them pre-qualified. Okay. So that's just the answer to that is just getting them pre-qualified. However, what's happening in the market now, and I'm just going to share with you some things that have happened recently for me, and maybe Sally, you've got this with some of your folks. I've had 2 buyers recently that are putting 20% down on one of my listings be able to remove the appraisal contingency. Because, I start being a nervous Nelly thinking, oh, great, look, my sellers are all excited about accepting this huge price at a price that I did not list the house for, because if I thought it could have sold for that, I would have listed it for that, right? If I thought it could have been sold for $20,000 more than I listed it, why would I have listed it $20,000 less, right? So, however, buyers are pushing the pricing up because they're willing to pay it. So I actually had 2 buyers, and when I say recently, like one of them isn't closed and one just closed. So they removed their appraisal contingency because their lender was able to say, we're not gonna require an appraisal. So that is huge. So if you're a listing agent and you're getting multiple offers and you've got some of these buyers that of these multiple offers are putting 20% down, here's just a little, I would inquire from that buyer's agent, hey, would your would your buyer be willing to remove the appraisal contingency? And here's another thing that happened to me recently. The lender was not willing to remove it, yet the buyer did. So the buyer who was putting 20% down was so sure they wanted that house that no matter what it appraised for, which I mean, I really do think it's going to appraise certainly at list price, because I know I've got comps to support that, and perhaps a little more based on the market. And he's willing to have the lender loan on the appraised value, and he will make up the difference. And that can happen with a very motivated buyer and people that are putting 20% down, because maybe it'll end up that he'll only be putting 15% down. Does that make sense? You following that? Picking up what I'm putting down? But that was a new one on me. Sally, had you heard of that? Yeah, that was new on me. Like I said, the first time was a little over a month ago. Okay, so if there's an appraisal that's low for the seller, like I said, I get a little worried about these listing a house where I think it's going to sell, and then we're getting these offers for $20,000 and $15,000-$20,000 more. If I thought I could sell for that, I would have listed it for that. So when the seller does get an appraisal that's low, it could be because we escalated too high. And it's just really going to be a renegotiation, if at all possible. And if they do have the appraisal contingency, maybe they can change their financing and do the less of a down payment than they were planning and make up that difference. Maybe the seller will meet them somewhere in the middle. The seller will take less for the house. The buyer will bring more to satisfy the gap. So that's about where I am on that for sellers. Anybody want to add to that? And I think this third point here, it probably means have another appraisal done, because it did. And I left that on there just to see if anybody else, I mean, because this is Keller Williams University that did this, not me. I'm just presenting it. But having another appraisal to be done if there's no comps might need to be a second opinion, basically, is what we're looking at for that. So a low appraisal for a buyer, if they can make up the difference, yay, then that's not going to be a problem. However, it is more of a reality in the cases of buyers that they can't pay the difference. So, does that mean that they're going to change the amount they're doing on their down payment and utilize some of that money to make up the gap if the seller's not willing to come down? It says here, financial gift from parents or family. And that is usually, like, they call it arm's length. Like, I couldn't have one of you guys loan me money because I'm not related to any of you. And it wouldn't really appear like a gift. It would probably appear a lot more like a loan, because notice how this says a financial gift. So, and anybody here that is old enough to have adult children know that when you give them money, it is a gift. It is not a loan. Now that I've got 2 adult children. So anyway, these are just options. So a second mortgage could have been something that a buyer can look at. And that's in a different market. I don't see that happening as much anymore. So anyway, appraisal problems. I want to check our time because I don't want to run out of time. Doing all right, I guess. How's that? Yep. So anybody had appraisal problems that have occurred that you want to step in and help us all learn together? maybe not.
Well, I was just going to say, not really, haven't really had any major problems other than the length of time it takes to get the appraisals. But the lender that I work most closely with, he used to wait until we got through the inspection period to order the appraisal. So my buyers weren't stuck paying for appraisal and then pulling out of the loan or the contract. But here lately, he's been going ahead and ordering those appraisals the minute we get them under contract, because otherwise you may not get it back. If you wait, 10 to 14 days to get through the inspection and those negotiations, if you've got a tight 30 to 45 day closing, you may not get that appraisal back and have to delay. So, that's what we've been doing so far. It's been okay. But again, you run the risk of your buyers having to pay for an appraisal and then not. So, we've both had that conversation with my buyers to let them know that if, God forbid, something shows up on the inspection and we can't reach an agreement, you will be out that money. But if we don't, there's no way we can close on time. So kind of putting that ball back in their court a little bit, so they're not caught off guard and saying, why didn't you tell me? Now I'm going to have to pay two appraisals because I'm not getting this house and I'm going to have to pay for the next one. So
Yeah.
Just kind of keeping that communication open has helped.
That was so helpful, and absolutely agree with everything you said, Dion. Thank you. So in that case, so I too am seeing that the lenders want to order the appraisal right away. What we can do is stay in close contact with, the time frame of the inspection and how that's going. And if we have to pull the plug on the appraisal, the scheduling of it, if it's been done, it's been done. If it's not been done, and we can kind of put the word out like, hey, this inspection situation is not going too smoothly, can we just put a little pause on that? So that was very right on, spot on information that you shared, Dion. Thank you for that. Yeah. Anybody else? It's a real deal out there. And like I said, especially we're negotiating, everything we're doing in this shifted market is different than those of us that have been around for a while than what we've been doing. Everything is different. It feels, I mean, even, with your sellers, there was a time that, you were consulting with them and, preparing, and if they got one offer, a couple of weeks or 30 days after it was listed, you were like, yay. Now it's like, if their house isn't sold in 4 days, you're like, what have I done wrong? Oh my gosh. Or how about your buyers? Are your buyers looking at a house and saying, it's been on the market for 6 days. What's wrong with it? And years ago, it was like 6 months. So it's a big, everything is different. I can't help but say that.
I do have one other question, just curious if this has been the standard, but one of the last transactions I had, it's like the appraisal was ordered, the appraiser came out on the 18th, but didn't get the report back to my lender till like the 26th. Is that common? Was it a VA? Nope. Just conventional.
VA has 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's just conventional. So, I mean, that's normal?
I don't know if it's normal. I actually have been surprised if I get them back within a week, but you were just saying that was 12 days.
That's not a whole lot more than a week, I guess.
Well, I'll tell you,
it's just a week.
We need to be cognizant of holidays.
Right.
I mean, it's always a chaos around like Thanksgiving and Christmas,
right?
Those times, and you want to extend even inspections. I'm always worried about time frame around holidays can be tricky. So, and summer vacations, and especially if you're relying on somebody specific.
Right.
But great conversation there. I mean, it happens that there's those concerns for sure. So communication, my favorite. favorite. Just my favorite only because this is where you have so much control, right? You don't have control if the roof is leaking. You don't have control if the whatever the inspector finds. You don't have control over somebody not qualifying. However, you have control over the communication. The last thing that I would ever want someone to do in a transaction with me in the end say, geez, I wish Marie would have like told me better what was going on. I don't ever want them to be able to say that. So I take communication as a very, very important part of this. And you are the one that has control over the way you communicate. So, and by the way, on this note, I'm going to say, don't throw anybody under the bus. I do not, if I am not able to get a hold of another party, I am not calling or texting or emailing the party that wants to know the information and say, they are so unresponsive or I can't get a hold of them, or they never get back to me. I don't do that because, well, I do unto others as I would want them to do unto me. And we sometimes, you know, there's just times that timing, you can't get back to somebody right away, or you don't have the information. I'll tell you what I'm probably famous for is calling someone to say, I'm calling you to say I have nothing to say. I'm calling you to say I don't have any information. Because if I know they're like waiting on the edge of their seat for the information that they have asked of me and I can't get it, I'm going to let them know I'm working on it. And I did that this morning about something, and that agent, I just said, hey, knock, knock, knock. Hey, what's going on? He picked up the phone. I'm applauding him. He picked up the phone to tell me we've had a perfect storm. You know, my assistant is out. Our scanner is broken. This, that, and the other. None of it sounded like unrealistic excuses. I mean, it could have happened to you or me, right? So it was not a deadline. I wasn't sweating anything yet. My client was asking me if we had that signed document, and we don't. So he picked up the phone and called me, and he goes, I just felt like I needed to call and tell you this, because truly, you know what? If what he said came to it from a text saying, oh, my assistant is sick and my scanner doesn't work, period, click send. It was a lot different when he picked up the phone and called me. So that's something I admire that, and I applaud that, because there are times that a text is not enough. So, however, like I said, you have all this control, and look at all these people we're communicating with one transaction. You're talking to a lender. You're not maybe talking to the appraiser, but if you are the listing agent, the appraiser's calling you to make that appointment. So you need to then in turn communicate with your sellers. Hey, the appraiser wants to come on Monday at noon. Is that going to be cool with you? No, I'm doing a Zoom class that day. I can't do it at noon. I mean, you know, so you got to get that answer. So you're communicating with the appraiser in that manner as a listing agent. Buyer's agents don't typically talk to appraisers. The title company, hey, they got to be working on your newly fresh out of the gate contract to close. So you got to communicate with them and get the purchase and sale agreement accepted and bound to them, and then in turn be following up to make sure everything is rocking along, you know, well. And the lender and the title company tend to speak more often than you need to. However, it's your job to make sure everything's going along, right? Other realtor, buyers, sellers, these are lots of people to be communicating with. So, and again, I said earlier today, hopefully, you know, we are going to be working with each other a lot. The buyer, maybe in the future, the seller, hopefully in the future, if they're leaving town, maybe never. However, communication is what's going to be the lasting impression. Am I right? They're going to forget that, you know, the broken handle of the doorknob wherever wasn't fixed, or they're going to forget about, you know, somebody, you know, showed up late to an appointment, you know, for the closing. They're not going to forget how you communicated with them. Do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah, I do.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So with these different people and the differing things, the loan officer, if you're the buyer's agent, you're definitely checking in with them, make sure everything's going along right up till close. This morning, I'm having to find out, hey, this girl needs to wire her funds. And they said, oh, she could just get a cashier's check. I'm like, she doesn't have a local bank. She can't. She's got to wire it. So you're talking to the loan officer right up until, heck, when you're driving to closing, sometimes, unfortunately, you are. So this says surveys. We don't have a lot of surveys in our market. If you've got land and acreage, perhaps you do. But anyway, differing vendors, any of them, avoiding misunderstanding, differing expectations, because differing expectations lead to disappointments. And this is another one of those, don't assume. Don't assume anything that somebody is aware of some communication that you didn't give them. Make sure, over communicate if necessary. Asking questions and getting things in writing. If you feel, I want you to always be thinking about something, like a question and an answer that you've received that 6 months from now, someone's gonna say, oh yeah, what was it that they said? Well, I can tell you 6 minutes ago, I probably wouldn't remember. So 6 months from now, I'm definitely not gonna remember. So get some things in writing if it's going to need to come back, okay? Like promises, especially agreements, communicating clearly and often. That goes for every single person that you're staying in touch is the I feel. So what questions should you ask to avoid in the contract to close process? So we can go straight from, like, we're under contract, what's our checklist? Our checklist is to make sure the lender has the purchase and sale agreement and any and all counters. So the title company has the same. How about those of us, in the downtown office, we've got Stephen Lamar. In our East Brainerd office, we have Sally, is it Stephen? Who's doing our contract to close? Our compliance in East Brainerd. Somebody help me. I need a name. Oh, well, that's okay. One of you guys know. Anyway, so we gotta get our documents to our compliance because we don't want to find out that we forgot something. So let's get it to our compliance broker and have that. And Stephen Lamar in the downtown office, he says submit early and often. So we are wanting as leadership you to be submitting your contracts as soon as they become contracts to our compliance broker so that we can avoid concerns and issues down the road. So what else? What other questions do you have about the contract to close process and communicating?
I was on mute, sorry, but Joyce is the person for the East Brainerd office.
Oh, that's right. Of course, Joyce. What was wrong with me? Thank you, Jasmine. I know Joyce. I hired her. That's so silly of me. No, I was not focusing. So what questions would you have or do you have about the process that maybe has come to light today or you've asked in the past and you thought was very valuable? I love communication. That includes questions. But hey, guys, you know what? That's okay. It's A-okay. I just really, I can't express enough that knowing the journey and knowing what to expect, you can preempt issues and you can answer questions before they're even asked by your clients. So, whoops. Yeah, this next one. So this right here, the sellers, do you have a question?
I'm sorry, I was gonna say, and answer your question, just asking them what their concerns are or if they have any questions, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, and thank you for that, Karen. Again, don't assume that they know the process or expect the process to run itself. They might have questions. So just asking what they might not have asked yet, always, what else? Do you have any more questions? So this right here is getting a seller's financial situation. I like this quote at the bottom in red. It's from this agent in California. Never assume the seller's agent has asked all the right questions of the seller. And I don't think I would like to think this wouldn't happen often. However, I wrote an offer on a house a few years ago, and evidently the listing agent, who was relatively new, had not prepared the seller for the costs to sell. So commission was one of them. So we were under contract and he said, my sellers can't sell. And I was like, oh, tell me more about that. And he said, they can't. He goes, we've got to find a way to cancel this agreement. He goes, because they can't. And the more questions I asked of him, the more I realized he just had not consulted his sellers. He didn't know what was going on. They owed money on a loan, and it was very close to the list price or the contract price. I don't remember which was which, but there was no money to pay commission. There was no money for any expenses. So I really relate to what's written in red by this agent. Never assume the seller's agent has asked all the right questions of the seller. So this information, though, however, is unlikely that you as the buyer's agent are going to have this information or need to know this information beyond what you would see in the tax records. However, that little tidbit that I just shared with you, I've only ever had that happen once, and I've never heard of it happening, anybody else. But when the property was purchased, you can see that in the tax records. You can see the amount of the loan, not the current amount of the loan, but you can see what they financed when they bought it. And maybe you can see other recorded loans on there. They may have gotten a home equity line of credit. They may have taken out a second mortgage. You can see those on tax records. You can see those. So anyway, the bottom line, this kind of means we're just about done. So would you say, from all of what we've talked about, communication often, but often, not 5 times a day, unless it's necessary. It might be. I'm sure there's times that we do communicate with the same person 5 or 6 times a day, but probably not every day. So communicate often and communicate well. So recognize too, and a lot of you that know me and Sally teaches this as well, I know, about body language is such a huge part of our communication. It's over 57% of our communication. So when we are texting or emailing, we have removed over half of the true ability of to exercise the essence of the communication, right? Like we're seeing each other right now. And those of you that don't have your video on, I don't even know if you're sitting there. I don't know if you're paying attention. I don't have a clue what you're doing because I can't see you. So if I'm texting you and I'm emailing you, you can't see me. You can't hear the tonality in my voice, which is the second largest part of communication. So our texts and our emails, we remove the body language, we remove the tonality. So let's be really careful about how we communicate and what we say on our texts and our emails. And little smiley emojis, they help a little.
Yeah, they do.
They help a little. Spending plenty of time with your clients. Here's the thing I want to tell you, not too much time. And I'm going to say this regarding a listing appointment. I had someone say to me that they'd gone on a listing appointment and it was 3 hours. Now, I'm just going to tell you that if I was listing my house, I don't know that I can set aside 3 hours to talk to you about listing my house. Just saying, unless you set me up and you said, I'm going to be at your house for 3 hours. 3 hours is a long time to be with somebody. So even though we want you to spend plenty of time with your clients, set that up and make sure, because here's the thing, after X amount of time, like you guys know this class was 1 to 3, right? So if I'm still rattling on at 3:15 and Sally hasn't cut me off, you're not gonna be listening as well. So setting up the expectations of what amount of time. Another, I'm gonna flip from a seller, like a listing appointment, and flip to a buyer seeing a house. Now, does a buyer really need to look at an 800 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath home for an hour? Do you
No.
have an hour to spend the time with them?
Mm-mm.
No, I'd rather see you go home and spend time with your family or your dog or your cat. So when it says spend plenty of time with your clients, I think it should say spend appropriate amount of time with your clients, that they know they're important, and they are. And we're in this business not because we love houses, or maybe you are. You got to love people, or at least like them a lot. I've begun to like them less. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I wanted to see if you would laugh. Okay. So, but anyway, so spend an appropriate amount of time with your clients. Handle or closely oversee the contract to close process. Some of us might employ a contract to close person. We've got Lacey, we've got Ashley, we've got Paula, we've got Thomas. I mean, both of our Keller Williams offices have rock star admins. However, that doesn't mean you should be completely hands off. I mean, it'd be nice if you could be. I don't think you should be, though. And I don't think your buyers and your sellers would appreciate it, because who do they hire? You, right? Anticipating the problems. The only way you can anticipate problems is asking a lot of questions and knowing your journey, knowing your documents, knowing how to take that preventive action, right? And I'll tell you, knowing your clients and knowing what those triggers are that worry them, knowing what worries and knowing what doesn't worry them. That's another, as I just now said, knowing what worries them. I realize how there's things that don't worry people because they're like, oh, my dad's a plumber, or, you know, my brother, my son, they're going to come over and help me. They're so clever. Whatever it is, knowing what doesn't bother them is really probably just as helpful as knowing what does bother them or what is important to them. Understand your mindset. If you've got buyers that want to buy a house that they're going to move in, they're going to just back that moving truck in, and they're going to set up their furniture and all their things, and they're done. That's not a fixer-upper. Okay. And if that's what they want, they need to have that mindset. And that's what they absolutely are dead set about. We need to talk to them at the very beginning about what to expect. And number one, there's no perfect house. And number two, a house that they can absolutely completely move into, they may probably have to build it. Just saying. I don't know. Or live with it for a little while. There's no problem with that. Just make those plans. So that, I guess, comes into play is looking for the creative solutions, and then never give up. Never give up, and just know that when you know the process, you know the journey, you know the documents to use, and you know what? Unfortunately, you need to know the documents to get out of the offer, don't you? Because, there's some of us on here, we've had to talk about that. And yeah. And unfortunately, we do have to terminate. Sometimes all the bulletproofing that we do, and as well as we do it, it still might not be it might not come to it that we have been able to bulletproof it. I guess that means the bullet went through. So knowing your journey and knowing your documents is a huge part of this. And although we love people, we love houses, if we don't love documents, we at least have to know them. So now, any questions?
Come on, you guys, let's add some ahas or some takeaways here from Marie. What is something that you maybe wrote down or you're like, I'm going to implement that in my seller or buyer system?
I send daily notes of encouragement to my clients to be like, we're going to do it. We're going to find it. It's out there. We just got to keep plugging away. We're going to get it.
I love that, Rachel.
To keep them built up, because it's just like, one of my rental clients, we've gone through, probably 20 properties, and they have 4 cats. So it's really hard to find one, and they've got mold in their current dwelling, and she's constantly breaking out in hives. So we've really got to get her out of there. And my buyer, he's pretty flexible. He's willing to do some fixing on some properties, so that works pretty well. But yeah, I just keep them pumped, and I text them every day. I call them every day, and we have very brief conversations, sometimes longer if needed. We go to showings a few times a week. I stay engaged with them,
Great, thanks. So as far as, when we get that house under contract, we owe our diligence to our sellers and to our buyers to make sure that we have the ability to bulletproof the transaction. And some of them, they're going to be so easy. You're going to get to closing and you're going to say, wow, that was easy. And there's going to be others. I have a tote bag in the back of my car that another agent had embroidered for me, and it says miracle worker. and I can't help but having told you that, because talk about bulletproofing that transaction. I worked my tail off to make that thing happen. And that was like 3 transactions ago with these same clients. So I've had that thing in the back of my truck for a year. I would never carry it around, but I use it as like a tote in the back of my car. But it says miracle worker. And every time I glance at that, it just cracks me up, because that is this class right here. I bulletproofed the heck out of that thing. And they made a lot of money when they sold it. And I've since sold them another house. And that was like, I bulletproofed that one. I won't name names, but it was one of the agents in our office. And he said, wow, you really made that happen. It's just staying on top of it and knowing. And you know what? Sometimes you got to be like, who's that? Kenny Rogers, no one to hold him, no one to fold him. The gambler. I can't believe I remember that. Anyway, but sometimes you got to fold them. Like Karen, you had to fold one recently, and you just got to do it. But sometimes if it can be held together and it's for everybody's, it's a win-win. It just takes knowing when to make sure it's right to keep on going.
I love that. Never give up, because there are some markets that feel like a 1-mile fun run. And there are some markets that are a full-blown marathon. And you might need a pacer runner. You might need a cheering section, but never give up, right?
That's awesome, Sally. That is awesome. Our little Spartan there. Awesome. Well, this has been a pleasure to see some familiar faces, and I haven't seen a little bit, and miss you, and new faces, and thank you, Sally, for letting me hang out with you.
We just really appreciate all of your energy and your knowledge, and we can all live by the example that you set for wanting to have really great expectations and standards and asking great questions with our clients. I hope all of you guys that popped on today got some really great takeaways, and we are so glad to have you with us today on Zoom. And thank you so much, Marie.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Marie.
Thank
Okay.
you.
See you later, guys. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Sally.